Welcome back, everyone, to Masters Tour Ruins of Alterac. All done with the quarterfinals now and moving on to the semi-finals. And Gia, a very important semi-final it is going to be for this first one, because not only is it the players' livelihoods in this tournament on the line, or lives, I suppose, would be a more appropriate way of saying it, it is the final chance here for Europe to keep up its perfect streak alongside China in only Europe and China winning Masters Tours for the last 2 years, since Bucharest was the last time a non-European or Chinese player won a Masters Tour. And with Gaby being the lone European left in, no Chinese players in the top 4, it is so much on the line in terms of the history of Hearthstone esports.
That's right. The last winner outside of EU or CN was Eddie, and he even dropped the trophy. Does that even count, Derek? I don't know. I have to tell you, I think I have hit rock bottom, because not only am I a 26-year-old woman beefing with a 16-year-old on Twitter, I have also lost the beef, Derek, because Gaby's through the top 4 and Alutemu isn't. I'm in shambles.
No. It's not about winning. Alutemu doesn't need to win a Masters Tour. It's just about letting people know who you stand for, sending the message. Do I sound convincing at all? I don't believe myself in what I'm saying right now, but whatever. I'm going to still root for the APAC players here, but I am, of course, incredibly excited for Gaby in his own right. I mean, his bravado and his... you know, inflating his own ego on Twitter at this point is honestly very deserved. Like, he is just still probably the best player in the world right now after his performance last year, through to another top 4 here in a Masters Tour. It's truly an unbelievable streak. Like, he's right up there now with Just Saiyans' miracle performance in 2018, Hunter Race getting that victory that year as well, alongside some of the real legendary moments in Hearthstone esports. And he's looking like he's got a very good selection of decks to go the distance. I think once again, Gaby just defines what the standard lineup in a meta game is. He doesn't try to go too fancy. There's nothing crazy out there. He's not going full aggro, full control, or these wacky alternate decks that we've seen from some other players like Adriano. He just brings what ultimately end up to be the best decks, and he plays them better than anyone else.
Yeah, deserves the hype, undoubtedly so. And that Rally Priest is sort of the banner deck of what is the best lineup here, because it is simply the highest win rate archetype in the Masters Tour as a whole so far. And I'm glad that we get to see it run up against its counterpart of the Malagos Miracle Priest. Of course, both decks with access to huge combo pop-off turns, but that Rally version with the Sethic in particular has sort of separated itself because of its resilience, I would say, against Demon Hunter. Like Sottle did throw out a stat that Miracle Priest base version with just Malagos was actually running positive against Demon Hunter. I'm not actually sure if that's how most people would evaluate the matchup, but I'd imagine that Rally does even better here. And when we're faced up with the mirror here, even though holywater absolutely proved that he is a top-notch Miracle Priest player, I would say it struggles against Rally Priest, because there's just so much more opportunity for Rally to get on board early, just playing Sethic, Nazmani straight up, and they can continue to refill with raised deads and rallies, and they have more value in the long run.
That's exactly right. I find that in this matchup where the Miracle Priest that holywater is playing is a lot more explosive a lot of the time, you're going to be making these huge pushes onto the board where you're making, you know, 12, 15 health Nazamanis on a single turn, thanks to Psych Split and all the buffs as well. But because of the one very, very important factor in this matchup of Shard of the Naru, that can all count for naught. It's much more about efficiency of stats on board and repetitive value. One push onto the board is often not enough, and those Sethic Veil Weavers gives you so much more potential to keep putting down threat after threat after threat. And not only does Gaby have consistent value available here, he's just got a lot of tempo. This hand is really fast.
Yeah, he's hit the minions, and he can resurrect them with Rally. You can already see the difference here of the two versions. Gaby has the absolute liberty to just play down a Nazmani, because if it gets cleared, he can resurrect it many different ways. holywater has a pretty good hand for himself with the palm reading, and he picked up Insight with that Thrive in the Shadow, so he can corrupt it right away. Obviously doesn't have an option to remove the Nazmani on the other side, so the next best thing to do is probably prepare for the best possible counter push, and that's getting a Nazmani of his own and absolutely popping off enough, but he still lacks, I would say, one of those big mana sinks that you really want to benefit from the big copy turn on the Nazmani's. Best he has is Psyche Split, and that's not necessarily going to be enough against his opponent, who also has access to Shard of the Naru.
Well, step one, he has to actually hit the Nazmani and not the Malagos, which has now been accomplished. So, like you said, a very good start to the game. But I imagine that unless Gaby is able to bolster it up to the point where he is pushing huge amounts of damage, he's not actually going to attack anymore. And so Gift of the Naru is not going to be drawing any extra cards for Holy Water. But instead, he's not waiting an extra turn. He's just going in right now. And I think quite correctly coming to the conclusion that he will be able to play the Psych Split. We can see he absolutely will. And then just hoping that a massive board right out the gate is enough to just brute force this matchup without even dealing with any of the value that Gaby can generate.
You know what? I can get behind this. It's just like how I've said when you're faced against Control Warrior as Miracle Priest, sometimes it's so bad that you just have to say, have the thing, and if you don't have it, I cheese a victory. And it so happens that Gaby doesn't have Shard of the Naru, and he's only running one copy to begin with. However, he has his own train of spells, and he generates Shadow Word Ruin right out the gate. If that's playable, he gets to clear both the 8/9s.
Oh!
Looking like he's jamming.
Disgusting.
He gets a Devour as well.
Absolutely disgusting. The Devour is the nuts. The Shadow and Ruin, insane. Horn, Apotheosis. Every single one of these cards is just absolute pure fire.
All right, he has to actually hit the discount on the Shadow Word Ruin. Okay, he hits it at the last point, but he did silence the other Nazmani, so it looks like he wasn't planning to ruin here at all, which does make some sense since his own Nazmani would get caught by the Shadow Word Ruin at this point. He is just going to remove the vast majority of the threats, and you know what? It's fine, because if there's no Sethek on the other side, there's not much payout for Holy Water managing to get even more discounts, and he doesn't, because all the relevant threats have just been value traded. The last remaining Nazmani is silenced, and that, I want to say, is just the game.
Holy Water is getting cyberbullied by a 16-year-old right now. This has gone outside of Hearthstone. This is absolutely disgusting.
Holy Water, I relate. It's okay. I'm here. We're on the same boat here. Hysteria is not enough to clear, but at least it kills the Sethics. I got nothing.
Who cares? It doesn't matter. Like, okay, so if he gets... I think you probably wait a turn, right? Because your opponent has a huge hand anyway, so you want them to slip up and maybe go a little bit too all in is your only avenue back into the game. And like, because they have so many cards in hand, they probably can't get that much more value from these Sethics anyway. And so you clear the board next turn, hope that they have 10 cards in hand that are all complete trash by some miracle, and then you top deck... Malagos is too expensive, but like maybe Draconic Studies into a stall into Malagos can get there.
I mean, it's possible.
It's possible.
Now, okay, so if the 2/7 goes in the 8/13 and there's Hysteria, it actually is a clear, right? Because double hit into both Divine Shields and the minions is 12 points of damage. So he can clear the board. Yes, he still has to contend with a full hand of value from Gaby, but you worry about that later.
Proto Drake next turn. Okay, you know, if your opponent doesn't have a refill next turn, say they've just got all buffs or all removal and no actual meat to apply those buffs to, you know, there's something.
Wait. Not a full clear.
Oh, it's a little bit off. Okay.
Oh. Oh yeah, the other Sethek had too much health on it. And so Gaby gets to go again.
Yeah.
And Holy Water has a Proto Drake.
Yeah, he's got that really nice balance of 2 and 2. Like, I feel like the golden ratio with this deck is 3 Nazmanis, 2 Sethics is like the perfect distribution to be able to always play everything you generate, and at that point you really just become unstoppable. But in this matchup, I think this will do just fine.
Yeah, no need for the golden ratio here. This is enough. Tell you who is taking a ratio, though, and an L. Holy Water.
You? Oh no, okay.
Me, but also holy water.
Oi, oi, oi. What a first game here. Gaby on this priest, man, he just looks like he's on another planet with this deck. It feels like he's hit some kind of secret formula here that no one else is privy to. Because even though we've seen other people play this deck in this meta, we've seen other people play this deck in other metas, right? When like Xananan was streaming away with this deck back in the day, consistently hitting rank 1. Letta, a huge proponent of this deck as well over in EUGM. It's always had strong counters, or people have been aware of it in the metagame. Whereas here, I think players were more so concerned with, if anything, Miracle Priest, the version with Malagos that holywater is playing. Whereas this version is just catching people off guard and truly looking unstoppable.
It honestly feels like a deck that has been on everybody's radar for a while, the Rally Priest, but has maybe taken time to, first of all, hit the perfect spot in the meta where it's viable, but also get people to keep up with the learning curve on it, because it is an extremely complicated deck in terms of timing, and then mastering how to actually navigate those million variable Sethic turns is also extremely difficult. But leave it to a player of Gaby's caliber, of course, to make sure that the deck can shine at its brightest. That is the Rally Priest out the way though, and now he has Quest Rogue lined up, which if holywater wants to run it back with the Miracle Priest, is going to have a hard time again, because Quest Rogue is a great matchup into Miracle Priest with its access to SI7 assassins, Fizz Flash distractors, and also just constant pressure. The Cult Neophytes in there also adding to the list of headaches for the Miracle Priest.
Very true. However, I think if holywater can get himself off to the kind of start that we saw in the previous game, well, against Quest Rogue, I could see that getting there. You know, 2 huge Nazmanis on turn 4, I think it was for him, the turn after he played the palm readings. At that point, the Assassin is probably not online. Scabs is certainly not online at that point, so it's fairly unlikely that there'll even be a Fizz Flash distractor in the first place. But holywater needs to get there first, which pretty much necessitates a palm readings to get off to that fast of a start.
And that's why we see him keep the Thrive. It's just another chance at having palm reading, and because Thrive costs 2, you never really disrupt the curve of being able to play palm readings on 3 if you find it. And there it is on stun.
Okay. Yeah. Don't even think about that one. In this hand, with Insight plus Horn, it's doing stuff.
Definitely is. Meanwhile, for Gaby, he did get off to a pretty good start with the Foxy Swindle. Always nice to see those together, because individually, Foxy doesn't get that much value oftentimes. Can still be paired with Assassin or Agent, as we see here. Gaby piling on maximum pressure, which is something you can do relatively comfortably, because there is no Zyrella for Miracle Priest these days. holywater here, incidentally, wouldn't have been sad to hit Malagos, I think, so he could get the 2-1 rushes from the Horn. But he ends up with Nazmani, which is not from the inside, so it's actually still going to take a while to put together a big combo here. So Gaby can take the window to pile on even more pressure, but does that come in the form of Operative or going Skulker Swindle? The Operative would also get him a gizmo to work with, so he could still potentially spend all his mana.
A little awkward, because if you hit one of the bad gizmos, like Fizz Flash, I suppose, would be fine, but one of the ones you can't use immediately, basically, you don't really want to trade Extortion, I want to say, because that would actually be quite good to use to take out some extra Nazmanis once they come down and the pop-off does occur. And by hitting the mole, it's the best of both worlds for Gaby. Max pressure, keeps the Extortion, so he has removal as well as development. And now for holywater, with how much damage on board? 11-13 right now. I think he just needs to be very brave here and go palm readings, probably Desperate Prayer, so he's not just dead to a Wicked Stab.
Yeah. If this had a condemn in it, then we could talk. I think we've already seen that in a previous series, but no big AoE provided to him by the palm reading, so it will have to be the Desperate Prayer to stabilize. I agree, not just die to Wicked Stab, but that Insight missed the 50-50 on Nazmani here, and that means that holywater's next turn is significantly lower power level than it could have been. Still has second Insight though, so he can still do things with Nazmani, but it's not a big stabilization unless something big is hit off the Thrive.
I do think he has to, because he's not just dead to Wicked Step. I think he's just dead to Shadow Step. Would get it up to 15 with the SI agent, sorry, and then Dagger for 16. So I think even though it uses up a key spell for the Nazmani turn, it's very, very clever to do so here, just to buy yourself likely one extra turn. Gaby, I don't think, can be looking at any lethal outs given his mana restrictions, in which case... maybe it's just Skulker plus Swindle. I was going to say Informant, but digging for those lethal outs next turn is worth quite a lot still.
Yeah, just having them in hand, because you once again ask holywater to clear the board and heal enough, and asking multiple questions is always the best way to set up a 2-turn lethal. Holywater here, like you said, the Desperate Prayer was a heavy expenditure because it's precious fuel for the Nazmani turn that's about to follow, because right now he doesn't have any copy effects. He'll be working with one natural 3-cost Nazmani, and as long as he doesn't top deck the other Nazmani, 1 mana from the Insight. And then he has Coin and Shard as 0-cost spells, but that might not be enough to necessarily stabilize. He'll have to get down the Malagos as well for that to all work. Okay, here's the turn. He's got to go right now.
It's got to be the miracle of Miracle Priest here for holywater to have any chance whatsoever. And there it is. Nazmani double coming down. We want to see Gift of Luminance here, I think, for there to be a chance to get Malagos playable, which kind of feels necessary, because you're going to need to hit Malagos and then probably also the Mount as well.
Oh, hits Prayer. That's huge. That is no chance of it eating the discounts here, so he can get the Malagos down. If he hits double Shadow Word Devour, this could be a board stabilization. Comes off both Foxies.
Oh, go, go, go!
Oh, holywater 100% can get all the actions done here. We've seen him do it before. Holy Smite helps him clear a bit more, but that's 0 Devours picked up. Renew can help heal a little bit, but can he get the Elec Mount down? That's the big question. Can he put a wall in the way? Psyche Split is green. Elec Mount is not green, but the turn is not over yet. However, studies are the only
Condemn!
the train. Oh, Condemn! And the Elec Mount is green! He's doing it! He's stabilizing!
He's actually getting there. I don't think he got Elec Mount and Psych Split in that exact order, but who cares? This is still absolute mountains of pressure coming through. Easily lethal represented back the other way. And Gaby's near clean 100% victory has just crumbled before him. This was one of the biggest pop-offs I have ever seen with Miracle Priest.
Holywater just always does this. He can play all the cards post Malagos. He can get it done. He's just an absolute god on this deck. No exaggerations. Gaby passages to find Assassin. I have to assume doesn't find it. Throws down the Concede, and both the priests are out of the way.
And there it is. The bully has become the bully. At this point, as holywater getting the win here in truly impressive fashion. The Priest, obviously a big win for both players here, but I kind of felt more so for holywater. That was, you know, that's not a good matchup most of the time. The Rogue with a hand like that should be able to get there, but through some fantastic high APM play, holywater keeps his dreams alive and is shown to be truly unflappable even against a player of Gaby's caliber. Gaby queuing up the Rogue again, and now Gia is the Paladin and the Demon Hunter on the other side, with the Rogue and the Demon Hunter left for Gaby. And so with the only difference being the Libram Paladin for holywater versus the Quest Rogue for Gaby, how are we feeling about our players' chances heading into Game 3?
Well, we do have to look at the head-to-head between Quest Rogue and Paladin, which, funny enough, is something that we've been discussing since the past couple of weeks in APAC Grandmasters, as on paper, we feel like it's favored for the Quest Rogue, and I still sort of feel that way, but not heavily. Either remaining deck, though, that is not the Demon Hunter is good, and 2, the Demon Hunter on the other side, so I feel like it could come down to a Demon Hunter mirror. Holywater is going to start off with his Demon Hunter, though, and we'll see whether or not he's able to sneak in a win in the unfavorable, because Gaby on the Quest Rogue here, I'm sure it will be feeling confident in the matchup.
All right, right out the gate. Oh, lovely curve for Gaby.
True. Certainly feels like we got some of the heavy fireworks done at the beginning of the series with the two super high APM decks and two super high APM players getting their wins. Nigh on unstoppable on other side, but make no mistake, there is still lots of high-level Hearthstone to be had here. Maybe not in terms of the actions that need to be done within a single turn, but the timing of your threats here, I feel, is the most important thing for the Rogue. Can they build a board that is not able to be cleared by the Demon Hunter every single turn? Because it's all about finding that one window as the Demon Hunter where you have a low pressure turn on the other side and suddenly you can turn the tables with a Kurtrus, maybe a big Lifesteal turn with Eldrazi Warblades, and from there run the Rogue out of threats.
A bit of an unfortunate mulligan for holywater, keeping the quest and the spectral sight. And I believe the card that was in the expendable performer's position was actually the other half of the combo, it was the Deadeye, which I have to be honest, I was actually considering holding on to, even if it meant dismantling the combo, just because a 2-3 on turn 2 with a hero power is not bad, and just guarantees that spectral sight to be able to come down on turn 3 or 4.
Definitely a consideration, but I think holywater was just hoping for pretty much anything but performers in that position, and it still would have been better without having to get rid of that Deadeye as a potential burst later on. But Gaby on the other side also didn't end up with the greatest hand post-mulligan, but has sort of been bailed out by his top decks here. This Might and Assassin that early you certainly don't want to see, but now he's had other options with SI cards, and the Shadow Step now on the Skulker means he can make great pace with the quest progression. We'll see what the second gizmo is. It's a Noggin Fog Generator. That's a pretty good one, honestly. If you just hit SI7 Smuggler, even outside of stealthing Scabs itself, it can be a lot of pressure represented for Demon Hunter to deal with. holywater now has this crossroads of whether he wants to just play Magtheridon. He doesn't have the guaranteed wake up for it, and obviously it's scary against a deck that has access to Shadow Step, but he did technically see a Shadow Step used already.
Yes, seen 2 now. A weird play, though, for holywater, I've got to say, letting rip with the double jump when it was 2 out of 3 to see an unplayable glide, and then just playing the spectral sight as well afterwards. It felt like he was really all in on hitting the 1 out of 3 for spectral sight, whereas I kind of just preferred the idea of chilling for a turn and then outcasting the glide next turn.
True. Maybe holywater was going for the super optimistic outcome because he felt like he was that far behind. Reasonable, but now he's in that position where, like you said, the glide is not outcastable, and he's drawn cards that would be shuffled back anyway if he does go for glide. I'm sure Gaby will still have glide on his mind, though, so trimming the hand down would be high on the priority list. In terms of dumpable things, though, you don't really want to just play Noggin Fog for 2 attack immediately when it can have such a big upside later on. And I think it's still not a disaster if a 5-card hand gets glided back here.
Alrighty, so obviously a glide is available for holywater, but it looks to me like he's still trying to dig for a way to activate this Magtheridon would be the main reason, because honestly, outside of that, I would be pretty happy to lose this hand he's got right now. It is doing absolutely nothing.
True, and the Magtheridon activation would come in the form of Fellscream Blast, which even if he top decks it next turn, still doesn't have the mana to play all 3 together with Talented Arcanist. However, I guess he's just hoping that he can survive, and Gaby doesn't have Scabs playable this turn, which, to be fair, would only come in the form of SI7 Extortion on Gaby's own minion into Coin Scabs. It's not Scabs, but it's still a very threatening minion on the other side, which already requires a Magtheridon to deal with. So holywater is still in a whole load of trouble here, and it looks like the matchup is just going to end in a very one-sided fashion.
Yeah.
They alive on board.
Yeah. It does need to do something here, right? Just kind of a fairly apathetic effort, like, with an emphasis on the A at the front there for holywater, where it felt like nothing he was trying to do really felt like it was going for an attempt to actually win the game. Like, maybe there was some kind of an out that I was missing consistently along the way here. But at all points, he was just in a situation where his Gaby didn't have to do much. She just played cards, and it looked like it's getting there.
Well, with the I-Beam and Immo, there's not lethal just yet for Gaby.
True.
This might present 16 plus the 10 attack Smuggler here. Sorry, not Smuggler, Informant. I always confuse those.
Me too. Or Informant and Operative. That's my blind spot.
They're all just named some sort of sketchy occupation.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait for SI7 Caster next again.
Even Scabs, a butter cutter? That's not a real occupation. Something sketchy about that.
Oh, you think it's like Scabs Esquire? It's like Scabs Cutter of Butter. I think it's the name.
Am I wrong though?
Maybe not. I kind of thought of it as an actual name, not a description.
Well, Gyro Blade to push more damage, or Mole to generate even more pressure here. Both of them seem like very winning lines for Gaby. He could stealth something up, but at this point, what is he even really scared of? I guess exactly the hand being Magtheridon, Fellscream Blast, and Arcanist, which it could be from his perspective.
Right. And in that case, if he were to play the Gyro Blade, healing for 9, he would not set up lethal next turn. And so I think just playing around stealth in the middle and making it so Fellscream Blast plus a Arcanist is not good enough is the way to go. We do see Glide generated off the top, though, for holywater. And this is still only quest level 2, so anything he gets will be discounted. So there are still some weird little outs, I want to say here, for him to maybe get a clear here and stay in the game.
It's Arcanist Immo. He did play the Fellscream Blast before the Glide, so he could get the Scabs down to the break point where Arcanist Immo could get the job done, but he doesn't find the immolation. There's just no out from this spot, I think.
Gaby like, oh, I'm alive. Great.
I appreciate the effort from holywater to see Gaby's reaction. If it was like, okay, I'm going to play the Immo. And, oh, just kidding. I don't have the Immo.
Man, Gaby, yeah, I think having a little heart attack there towards the end, but realizing, okay, I got the win, Rogue down, Priest down, just the Demon Hunter left over. And the more I see it, Gio, the more I think this very back and forth series may come down to a Demon Hunter mirror of all things to decide it, because up next for holywater is either the Demon Hunter mirror, if he just wants to rip off the Band-Aid right now, or a Paladin, which, as we've seen time and again, just feels like a gorgeous matchup for the Paladin.
Yeah, it just has such consistent threat potential. Not impossible for Demon Hunter to get there. We did see it earlier today, but certainly a tall order. Gaby, of course, on the FelQuest Demon Hunter that has Kazakhstan at the top end. So there is some inevitability in the mirror if we do see that later on. Because generally in the mirror, I feel that once players have both gotten their quest through, they're going to be very cognizant of playing around the expendable performers combo if it is there on the other side. And then it sort of gets into a weird position where, okay, if they've had enough healing with their Jace to counteract my Jace, then it can get into more of a fatigue scenario. It's not often that happens because there's so many different things that can occur in the middle of the matchup, like a Magtheridon or gliding back their quest reward that pulls one Demon Hunter player too far in the lead. But in the case where it does reach a stalemate in the end game, then the Kazakhstan could be a big deal. We are still waiting, though, on whether it will be the mirror. Okay, I see it now. holywater is queuing up Paladin first, so he is taking the more favorable.
He is indeed, and I think there's no shame in doing that. He's got to win them both anyway, but taking the free win first can get your... sorry, the more likely win first. You're right, I'm getting ahead of myself. I mean, this is speaking from experience. Again, the last few days I've been playing a lot of this Libram Paladin, tinkering with a lot of the different lists, whether it's Trog, Barrel, Viper, Mutinous, Mr. Smite, so many different ways that it can go. I just feel that consistently, no matter what you do, the Demon Hunter just really struggles, and they're going to have to get off to a nice big Magtheridon start to the game, or some kind of an early cheese with discounting both Deadeye and the performers and trying to get there that way. But most likely, all of those routes to get a cheeky win come in the form of efficient quest progression, first and foremost.
I do agree with you on a random ladder game. If I were Paladin and I queued into a Demon Hunter, I'd feel like, yeah, free win. Seems nice. But unfortunately for holywater, this is Gaby we're talking about on the other side, and he will absolutely be looking for all of those cheeky alternate win conditions you were talking about. And he actually keeps Kurtrus in the opening hand. That's not something we see very often, but can be a way to stabilize in the mid game, and also sort of lends itself to the removal game plan you were talking about.
Yeah, it's a really nice way to bridge the gap in the mid game with the bats, obviously, to clear the board and make it so that at any point in the game, holywater does have to bear in mind that combo that we talk about with the oh no, sorry, not the Deadeye and the Performance, because Gaby is not playing that. My apologies. So instead, yeah, it's just to clear off the board and make the chip damage start coming through with that upgraded hero power.
And just a few matches ago, we saw Uchiha Sasuke with a very similar hand as holywater here, with double Bannerman, coining them out back-to-back. Excellent. But a lot of the rest of the hand is support cards / things that are too expensive. Not the ideal plays versus Paladin. However, that has been salvaged somewhat by the top deck of Aldor Truthseeker, which means that holywater at worst could go for Bannerman into Samuro, which by then, you know, it's gonna be a 3/8. That's still pretty threatening, even though it's not generally an aggressive minion nor useful in this matchup. And then just curve into Truthseeker, by which point your Libram of Hope is going to be pretty cheap. Not to the point where it follows up on turn 6, but I'm sure holywater will have found something better to do by then, leading up into the Libram of Hope turn. And it's just a very solid game plan.
I agree, but with a slight amendment, because like you say, the fact that Libram of Hope is not playable on turn 6 is a really big downside. And so by going with this way of going Bannerman on 3, Bannerman on 4, with a reasonable shot at having found Aldor Attendant to fill up that one remaining mana, then you can just go Truthseeker and then either coin Hope or just Hope if you manage to find the Aldor Attendant. And I think it just makes it so that even though you're a little bit slower to get off the starting line, you're much more consistently putting down threats every single turn, which is, I think, a really good understanding of the matchup.
I will defer to you and holywater here with a slight footnote that Glide is very scary the longer you hold on to resources, but we do see that holywater is somewhat hedging around Glide. He actually coined out the Knight of Anointment here after it's gotten the buff from the Alliance Bannerman, so it doesn't have the maximum amount of cards in hand, and especially leaving the coin in hand would make your average top decks after Glide quite bad indeed. Gonna be happy to see that there's no Glide here, so he gets to maintain this amount of resources and the buff from the Bannerman. We'll see how he chooses to proceed with the turn, though. Is it just going to be another Bannerman, or does he want to be more mana efficient?
Now that he's seen that Glide does not appear to be a consideration, or wasn't in an outcast position on that turn, at least, I suppose I should say. I was going to say I like playing one of the 3 drops instead, just because filling up your hand more is fine if there's no Glide. But clearly here, just going for, I guess, maximum mana efficiency is reasonable and does, again, play around Glide quite nicely.
That's Mechtherodon for Gaby, though, and he does have a pretty likely way of waking it up, I want to say, of just Immolation or a Fel Barrage hero power on the next turn. That is stopped if there is a taunt minion here coming down from holywater, but Gaby's still going to take the risk, and I think it's absolutely fine. Oh, and of course, you can weave in a hero power this turn already.
Yeah, it's nice. I hate my brain so much. I was just thinking, oh, wait, he could go hero power down the Samuro, which will kill off a lot of the health on the Acolytes, and then realize quickly that that's not how anything works, and I'm just an absolute fool. But this, I think the line that you and Gaby were going for here on planet Earth does make a lot more sense, and all the onus is now on holywater to find some way to protect these Acolytes and keep that Magtherodon dormant for as long as possible. Excellent positioning, of course, that we see to split up these minions in the case of another Fellscream Blast. And most importantly, Noble Mount, the Divine Shield, and the +1/+1 makes this so much tougher for Gaby to clear.
Yeah, it's honestly a bit confusing for holywater as to how he's supposed to mete out the buff effects? Do you split them up on 2 minions as he's done here, or stack them all on one? What's the hardest way for Gaby to clear everything? And honestly, it's really difficult to figure out given the many different breakpoints available to Demon Hunter. We saw Holy Water going for split up buff effects, which makes just Fell Scream Blast, I think, harder to use for Gaby. But with Immolation Aura, he's still able to sweep up the majority of this and weave in that last hero power to get the Magtheridon all woken up. And now Holy Water is on the back foot, but he has, thankfully for him, drawn Barov. So if he finds a broom or a way to just damage the Barov, he can kill the Magtheridon very easily, and there's the broom.
Wow. Okay. I mean, I was going to start bringing up the point that the fact that the horse lives is quite nice because you can go just Aldor Libram and start punching them in the face. But now that's not even all too much of a concern, and you can just clear off the board and keep this damage chugging along, leading up into a gorgeous mid to late game from Holy Water. This Aldor Truth Seeker makes it all so much cleaner, and you can go Aldor, Devout Pupil shortly after, and then Lady Liadrin will probably deliver lethal sometime in the next 4 or 5 turns.
True. I also forgot about the horse, and that's why I got very excited about a broom. When it's not necessary here, the Barov can simply take the Magtheridon down to the point where the horse is able to fell the mighty demon on the other side, and Gaby is now left to scramble for a different way of approaching this. The glide, however, is not being played this turn. Gonna go for the Kurtrus. Okay. This is what he kept it for, right? Just to get that big board presence, force Holy Water to be on the answering side of things, and then maybe go for the glide to disrupt.
Mutinous off the top. I think given that Magtheridon has already been played, there's no real juicy snipes outside of Jace, I guess would be the one outsider, but not good enough to distract you from your more standard game plan. And so I'm fully on board here with Aldor, I guess Trog plus Broom, and then you can use both of the smaller minions to take out one of the bats.
Right.
And then the Truth Seeker to deal with the other.
You can fit in quite a few Librams of Wisdoms with that as well, yeah, and end with a Wisdom on the Truth Seeker so it doesn't die as it trades into an 8/4 bat. I think Holy Water was just trying to figure out if he could fit a Devout Pupil into the turn as well, right, which I don't think was possible if he was aiming to get the full clear. Just a little bit awkward that he hadn't played enough spells on friendly characters to get it cheap enough by that point, but this is still a very effective turn, and it leaves Gaby with I want to say not the worst position ever. Obviously, his first 2 game plans of trying to get Kurtrus down early and Magtheridon to cheese the matchup didn't work out, but he's still in a position where Glide can be pretty disruptive here if he picks up something cheap enough to outcast it, but ends up with Need for Greed instead, so it's going to be a while before he outcasts Glide.
Are we looking at potential double quest completion on this turn, though, right? With Glide and Double Jump, it's definitely available on this turn. It's just whether he wants to take that opportunity. Okay.
Yeah, it's close, because if he had gone for the Chaos Strike Glide, he would have to face tank the 7 in order to actually clear it and progress the quest. So I think this is reasonable to delay quest progression, make sure he doesn't take any additional damage, and move on from there. But for Holy Water here, wow, so many powerful options. Whoa. Which one does he go for? Hope plus Pupil plus Wisdom is the biggest guaranteed board he could get. Of course, you could look at Mutinous, but Jace is, I suppose Kazakhstan also a pretty big hit at this point, but Magtheridon not in the pool anymore. So it is risky, I want to say, to go Mutinous, and just taking the guaranteed double Divine Shield big stats board is certainly a very effective way of pressuring Gaby still.
Yeah, I want to. I think I like just leaving the Mutinous in a nebulous place from Gaby's perspective as well, because it means that he can't, or he's much more reluctant to just get Kurtrus in hand and leave it there. He would obviously much rather play it on the same turn, which limits his options in terms of how to complete the quest a little bit. In the meanwhile, though, he is just focusing, as we expected, on that quest completion, and he is therefore going to be tanking a lot of damage right now.
Right, the Fell Scream Blast doesn't get any healing because it's only shaving off Divine Shields here. He gets Fury at least to buff the lifesteal and make sure that he takes, honestly, net +1 HP as he gets rid of the 8/8.
And he is setting up for a very, very big chase once that is drawn, potentially big enough to clear off another full board. But holywater saying, all right, enough is enough. Let's start really ratcheting up the pressure. No messing around with more Librams. Doesn't want maximum value, just wants value as quick as possible and damage as quick as possible as well. And so with Libram, 11 damage, very, very clearly representing lethal on the following turn. And with no Magtheridon left to Gaby, he needs something truly miraculous to pull himself out of this one.
Yeah, I love the line from holywater, not going Hand of Adal before Liadrin. He really doesn't need the additional card draw, and the most important part is he left himself the mana to play Holy Mount, and having the Divine Shield tagged onto that big minion just as a final nail in the coffin for Gaby. He throws it down. A Divine Shield means that for Gaby to get lifesteal, he has to jump through additional hoops to get rid of that shield. It's just the perfect storm of threat after threat, chained very, very effectively by holywater. Clearly knows the matchup well, and just as we predicted, Derek, it all comes down to a Demon Hunter mirror.
It's going to be a tense one. Matchup that we've seen a good amount of times, both in Grandmasters, obviously a good amount on ladder as well if you've been playing any Demon Hunter yourself. And the subtle differences could make all the difference in the world. As once again, holywater is playing the, I suppose you could call it more traditional build in this metagame with expendable performers plus the Fellfire Deadeye. Whereas Gaby is going for instead the Kazakhstan variant. And I believe, Gia, you or people close to you perhaps have very, very strong opinions on this matchup.
Well, on the matchup in particular, I'm honestly not sure, but like reason for running Kazakhstan, yes, people close to me have strong reasons for it. They're also very big fans of Sigil of Alacrity, which is the other card that's slotted in there, because of course you free up 2 spaces by cutting the Deadeye and the Performers. And the Sigil can be very clutch to set up faster quest progression, which is actually one of the most important parts of the matchup, being the first to hit Kirchus. Whether or not you're first to have access to your big combo, it of course helps to have the rest of your deck cost very cheap, so you can get a timelier Jace, for example, which can be the lethal blow. There's also, of course, still Magtheridon on either side, which we've seen many times in Grandmasters, prove to be a way that the matchup can end before any of those high-end tech inclusions matter. So we'll see if that first check for Magtheridon is met by either player. If not, we're going to be expecting to see a lot of glides back and forth. We're going to expect to see on Gaby's side, playing around Expendable Performers combo as a priority, and of course trying to land a big Jace, throwing out Fel Barrages early, making sure that it's truly loaded up to the point where your opponent can't necessarily get the safest breakpoint on their health total to play around Jace is a big deal indeed.
Well, so much to play for at this point, so much to think about as the winner of this single game of Hearthstone will be headed to the grand finals. Obviously, the first for holywater, but not so for Gaby, as he will be able to get one step closer to that double Masters Tour victory, the second player to ever do so, and well, also the second French player to ever do so, which would be something very impressive indeed.
But holywater could be the first APAC winner. That would be impressive as well. Well, Gaby, top deck Spectral Sight, but unfortunately didn't have a tradable card or double jump to guarantee quest progression on turn 2. So he settles for a Chaos Strike. That Spectral now kind of lodged in an awkward position where it's hard to outcast, but not a disaster just yet. Holywater with Glide, but it's a turn too early to be played here. Still pick it up though, because it's just one of the best cards in the matchup. He can get it to outcast over a couple of turns at worst. And in the case where Gaby glides first, at least you've stacked your deck with an additional glide that you can draw after you get glidden.
Yeah, in this instance, I don't hate holywater going for a what looked like an early Illidari studies, because if he hit exactly Spectral Sight, it was just very clean to go Spectral Sight, trade the Need for Greed, and get a nice easy quest completion. Whereas now he can just go Chaos Strike, Immolation, or a next turn, trade the Need for Greed, and glide on turn 5. Whereas Gaby here, drawing Need for Greed off the top, he knows that he is leaving himself very vulnerable to a glide on the other side. But what choice do you have? You are handed quest completion on a silver platter. You have to take it.
Question is whether he still wants to hedge around Glide a little bit by coining out Fury, for example. He does not take the bait here, which honestly, if I were in his position, I would chicken out and play around Glide, because he just saw an Illidari studies, right, played, and not the card from it played that same turn. So in my mind, I'd be thinking, oh, they're setting up for, you know, playing a 1-cost card from the left, which would then move the glide to outcast position and would cost 3 still because of that Illidari studies. Not the case here, though. holywater going to have a tough time to actually punish Gaby for keeping so many cards in hand. But he still has a pretty good play of trimming his hand down of resources, setting up for glide one way or another, even if it's just a self-glide the next turn.
Yeah, I mean, there were 3 really big plays I saw there on that turn of just going Chaos Strike Immo to set up for the cleanest glide with a trade the Need for Greed glide next turn. He could have gone trade Need for Greed and hoped to hit glide off the top for 3 mana thanks to the discount, which is I think where I would have ended up. But this way he gets the damage face, which is very, very relevant, make no mistake, even in a matchup with so much heal. And he also gives himself a chance to top deck Fury or Immolation Aura or Fel Barrage, a lot of cards that with which he can just outcast this glide from the right hand side next turn anyway, which I hadn't really considered as a possibility.
True. And Gaby himself is in a weird position where his own glide feels very awkward to play because it's shuffling back so many of his resources. But if you have so many cards in hand, how do you go about quest progression without the hand space? So he ends up having to take a turn off of glide as well, just to dump some resources to make sure you can progress quest without burning any cards on the next turn. And holywater has initiative on how he wants to approach this. Is it a dumpable card for glide? Nope, a little bit too expensive. But he can set up for it next turn. Wow, he actually just straight up plays the Need for Greed. All right. It is just stage 1.
He had a couple different avenues to be able to play glide on this turn. Quite clearly, he could have set up for playing glide next turn, but he's just so much more focused on his own quest progression. I guess maybe just making the read that Gaby does not have a glide of his own, so he doesn't need to be afraid of filling up his hand with cards. I get the suspicion that whether or not you think this was correct, a lot of players would have played this in multiple very different ways. As Gaby lets rip with the first glide of the game, getting himself up to quest level 3, and in the race towards Kurtrus, he is currently in the lead.
Definitely so, but as we know in this matchup, first to get Kurtrus in hand is not necessarily the one in the driver's seat because it can just be immediately glidden back on the other side. And maybe that's what holywater is posturing himself for. Maybe he looked at his hand and thought that, okay, I'm probably not going to be the first to complete quest here, but I can make sure that this glide is in outcast position by the time Gaby has his Kurtrus in hand. And that's going to be the way that he sort of hits parity with the quest progression. For this turn, though, he's looking to progress quest without using glide. Spectral Sight still 2 draws short, but he has 1 more chance with Illidari studies. Oh, the skull! Too expensive by 1 mana.
Just rip the glide. I guess he's just all in on denying that Kurtrus next turn, right? If Gaby completes the quest without a Kurtrus of his own, holywater needs that to send the Kurtrus back into the deck. And so I think this is very smart deviation from just the standard quest progression route. Right.
He also makes sure that when he does glide, he stacks his deck with more card draw with the pickup of the skull, whether or not he was looking to play it immediately. Double jump for Gaby into Spectral Sight. That is Kurtrus in hand.
Oh, man, that was such a big 50-50 for either Spectral Sight or glide there for Gaby. And by missing the glide, it means that holywater's glide is not glidden back into his own deck, so he can glide the Kurtrus away from Gaby instead. The rippling effects we get to see very, very quickly here. And for holywater, as good as this is, it's still not Kurtrus of his own in hand, right? So he needs a full extra turn before he's able to get his own quest completed and the Kurtrus played. So Gaby, despite being very upset, I would have to imagine, at this glide, still has a very real avenue back to being the first player to play Kurtrus.
Right? It could just come off of the 4 cards, we'll see. But holywater also, with that spare mana because of all the discounts, dumping more and more of the cards that are not quest progression, stacking his deck to be as condensed as possible with either quest progression cards or just win conditions, right? Kurtrus Demon Render, Jace, Magtheridon. And with that reaction from Gaby, I think he drew the Kurtrus? Did he? Oh, oh my god! All right.
No way. Oh, man. He's so sick. And glide off the top is just a microsecond too late here for holywater. He has to rely on Kurtrus glide. Okay, he does get his own in hand, of course. He can kill off the opposing Kurtrus, but he's just now so far behind in the race to get your win condition online.
True. He does have the first Kurtrus though, and that's more relevant for him than it is to Gaby, because he does run the performers combo. Of course, Gaby will probably not leave enough health on the other side for rushing minions to have enough. Also, this breakpoint on the bats is really annoying that holywater has to sync them both in. Maybe to the point where he could just leave the Kurtrus up and say to Gaby, okay, either you deal with my bats or you leave up the Kurtrus and then give a target for the performers combo, which is a concern for Gaby now, even though holywater hasn't played his Kurtrus quest reward. Performers plus Deadeye would be playable for holywater.
Yeah, I really like it, setting up for potential lethal if Gaby ignores this next turn with just the hero powers. But Gaby ripping Skull off of the Illidari studies, now presented with a glide of his own to send the Kurtrus back to his opponent's deck. But he doesn't even want to take it.
Wow. More concerned, I suppose, with, I want to say, juicing up the Jace for the next turn.
Right.
Does get the clear here with the Fel Barrage, sure. But, and with the heal, he would still be alive to performers combo here, right? At like 2 HP.
Yes, unless there was another Fury or to go alongside it, right? But actually, they would all cost full cost. So yeah, yes. No, he was alive. Yeah.
All right. Okay, big deal. But Gaby has 8 on board and a Jace in hand. Is this lethal? I'm not sure. I don't think so, even with double Fel Barrage loaded.
Yeah, I want to say no, because even here with the Arcanist to potentially activate off of the... to activate the Fel Barrage off of the Jace, if that were to happen, that would mean it's the first card played, so it would just go double into the Kurtrus anyway. So I do think Gaby has to keep digging on this turn.
Or the Kazaka-san, which is active. Or the Kurtrus, which gives him armor to potentially survive a Jace on the other side.
Constantly got to be thinking about that combo as well, obviously, that his opponent will have access to. So this puts him up to 25 health in this turn, apologies, with potential for a little bit more heal, like 3 extra with the Arcanist Fellscream Blast, which I don't think is an absurd way to go. And then at that point, I think even if he's not guaranteed out of range, it's incredibly specific hands that holywater would need to have to get there.
I mean, it's still kind of performers no matter what breakpoint Gaby's able to heal to here, right? Because the performer's maximum, if there's this much health on board for Gaby, is 28. He does take himself up to 34 by taking the full heal on his own minions here, which I think is very clever, because that does get out of the performer's breakpoint. Fel Barrage into Jace for holywater, going for a heal of his own. Very relevant that Gaby managed to weave in the Viper on that turn, because holywater doesn't get maximum healing from the Jace here. But Gaby is feeling some type of way here. I honestly cannot read what this expression is.
I mean, I want to say he's figured out that it's lethal with the Jace on this turn. I could not tell you if it is with what's been played. I couldn't really see it myself, but...
Oh, with the
being there? Ooh.
With the Kurtrus staying alive, it's almost certainly lethal, right? Because holywater has to tank the 7, or like on this turn or next turn. I think Gaby just has it.
That's 4 with hero powers, plus the 7, 11. He just needs 9 damage.
It's gotta be there.
From the Jace, surely it's there.
I mean, with that pop and the Fellscream, yeah, 100% this gets there. Gaby is our first finalist through to Masters Tour Ruins of Alterac.
All right, showing off his guns. Now let's see what Jace has got. Before we send him through, let's dispense with the formalities. This has got to be lethal.
Yes. I mean, I already called it, Derek. You said let's dispense with the formalities. Oh yes, let's just enjoy the Gab Jams.
I'm out of cards. There is
There we go. Okay, that's lethal 100%. The Fury, the Fell Barrage as well. Gaby with well over lethal there, thanks to the draws in his deck as well. And like you said, sorry to steal your thunder, Gia, Gaby is our first player through to the